So in this video, we're going to be looking at the answers to calculating an unknown side using tan. So the first question asks us what tan is short for. It's actually short for the word tangent. So in terms of drawing a right angle triangle to show us what the tan ratio is, I'm just going to draw one off to the side here. Now we know with a right angle triangle, there's a few things we need to remember to include. One being our right angle triangle, our right angle, and I'm going to include here a reference angle. So I'm just going to label that. So my reference angle is here, so we know that that's a hypotenuse. We know the side that is opposite to the reference angle is called our opposite. And then our adjacent is what is next to the right angle and the reference angle. So with our tan ratio, we actually are not concerned with the hypotenuse this time. What we do need to make sure we have is the opposite and the adjacent side and a reference angle. So that's represented by theta. Now, with the equation, it's actually tan of an angle, or theta in this case, is equal to the opposite divided by the adjacent. And we remember that by looking at the acronym TOA. So that tells us that for the tan ratio, we're looking at using the opposite divided by the adjacent. Alternatively, you might see it, written as that, or you might see it in a pyramid form. So TOA for TOA. So now I'm going to jump straight to question 4. So in here we're asked to find the unknown side, and it says to write the equations, diagrams, and answers in your notebook. So I'm just going to include them here. What I'm going to do now is just walk through the method. Now, an interesting thing for you to note here is that now that we've worked out what our adjacent is once we've worked out what our opposite is and we've been given our adjacent, we can actually use a couple of methods to find out our hypotenuse. So you could use Pythagoras at this point if you wanted to, because we have the length of the side that we normally say is. So now what I'm going to do is move on to question 6. So it says for the following triangles, find the unknown side and to write the questions, diagrams, and answers in your notebook. All right, so let's start by looking at our first right angle triangle. If I label my sides first, which is what I highly recommend everyone does, we can see that the side labeled Y is actually our adjacent. And that's because the reference angle is in one corner and the right angle is in the other. Then we have our opposite here, which is equal to 1.62 kilometers. So we know we're going to be using the tan ratio, and that tells us that it's the opposite over adjacent. Now, substituting the information I have, I've got tan of 25 degrees is equal to our opposite, which is 1.62 kilometers, divided by Y. So now I'm going to have to do one more step than I did previously in order to find out what my adjacent is equal to. So I'm just going to multiply both sides by Y. Just applying a bit of algebra. So I've got Y times tan of 25 degrees equals 1.62. So therefore Y is equal to 1.62 divided by tan of 25 degrees. Now, if you're wondering why I made that, why I divided 1.62 by tan of 25, it's because if I just move this, in order to get y by itself, because remember we're trying to find out what y is, I need to divide the left-hand side by 25 degrees. Now, I've said in previous videos that what you do to one side, you need to do to the other. So if you're going to divide the left-hand side by tan of 25, then you need to divide the right-hand side by tan 25 as well. So going back to this now, this is now in a form we can recognize and the calculator can accept. So I'm just going to do 1.62 divided by tan 25 degrees. If you can hear some buttons being pushed, that's just me and my calculator. So y is equal to 3.47 kilometers. So that tells us here that our adjacent is 3.47 kilometers long. So I'm going to do the same now for question B. So again, follow along and just check that your answers do match mine. All right, so our last question here is a worded question. So it says a nursery plants new trees and attaches a support wire to help as these trees' roots take hold. The angle of support wire from the ground up to the highest connecting point on the tree is 42 degrees. So I'm just going to highlight that. If the support wire is fixed to the ground 1.81 meters from the base of the tree, so we're being asked to find the highest connecting point of the wire on the tree and to give our answers to 2 decimal places. So if we take a look at the diagram, it's actually already been given to us, which is great. So what we're looking for here is clearly our opposite. Now, what I would always encourage you to do, if you are not given a diagram, go ahead and try and draw one. So a good strategy, I would say, if you are trying to do this question again as revision, cover up the diagram and draw your own. Use that then to compare it against the diagram we've given you and see whether or not your information is in the right location or right spot. So we're being asked to now find the length of the wire. Given that we've just drawn a right angle triangle, I'll draw it out again. So we've got 42 degrees here. We've got a length of 1.81 meters and we're asked to find our opposite length. I'm going to use tan, as is with the theme of this particular worksheet. So tan of theta is equal to our opposite over adjacent. So tan of 42 degrees is equal to x divided by 1.81. Multiplying both sides by 1.81. Get 1.81 times tan of 42 is equal to x. So therefore, if I put that into my calculator now, I get x is equal to 1.63 meters. Now, as I've said in the past, if the question's asked to you in words, it's always good to give your answer back in words. So we would say that the length of the wire is 1.63 meters, and that's it. So hopefully you were able to follow along with this video on work solutions. Hopefully your answers are correct as well. But again, if you are struggling with using trig ratios, then that's completely fine. Make sure you do seek some extra help. There are other videos on this channel available, or just speak to your teacher.